Well, it's super exciting to have you guys today. Congratulations to both of you on the nominations. It's the movie is beautiful. You've done an incredible job
Thank
getting
you.
that movie made and looking the way it looks. And we're just excited to talk to you today to hear more about the collaboration between the two of you. And yeah, that relationship between production design, cinematography. And I've asked my friend Rafael Leyva, who's an incredible cinematographer in his own right, to join us today. And he was, because we were, even yesterday, we were talking about it, and he's like, I have so many questions. I'm like, great. So the way it's going to work is we will be monitoring the chat. If anyone has questions, please drop them in the chat. Darren is kind of backstage, quote unquote, and we will be seeing what questions come in. So I might jump in at some point and be like, hey, here's a question from the audience. And then in the meantime, yeah, Rafael, you can take it. And but yeah, we're just excited, so we'll just jump right in. But thank you
All
guys.
right.
Thanks, bro.
Awesome. Nice to meet you, Craig. Jarin, I met you a couple years ago. I'm very excited to be here. I'm honored. The picture is gorgeous, obviously. This entire episode should be us clapping for you guys. I think it's such a beautiful masterclass and what we all dream to or aspire to help create. I guess my first question is, um, how far in the prep when you guys assign yourself to the project did you both started scouting together or started basically designing, the cinematography and the art world together, coming together in that world in the 18th century?
Scouts early.
Scouts are early. I had done some scouting before that. It's a strange picture because we had several false starts on this film, and so there was like a little bit of scouting and the film died. A little bit of scouting and the film died, and you didn't really start on the scout until this last time.
This I did the scout in one of the fall starts because we went to like some beaches in Germany, near Denmark, I think. Yeah, we went to what city did we go to? Not Gdansk, but no, that's Poland.
We went to Lubeck. Is
Yeah,
that?
Lubeck. Looked at some canals and how they're made
Oh,
and
Stade
the
had some
weather.
really nice canals too.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, early on,
Yeah.
I guess that's the
But the
answer.
scouting doesn't end. It just goes on until like into the shoot. Sometimes, like, oh, we didn't find the right, crossroads for forever.
Sure,
Um,
sure. Yeah, that's
very
amazing.
specific, the requirements to that.
Yeah. Often
Mostly
the
by me.
often the
But
thing that seems easy is the hardest. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's amazing. So, were you guys intending to do this always on location? Craig, I was so impressed. I rewatched the movie yesterday, went to the AMC, watched it, loved it. It was my second time. And, there's a lot of set construction, which
Well,
is, which is
yeah,
incredible because everything's real.
we did start off. I did start off doing. I scouted a lot of castles, for instance, but nothing really had what we needed. So early on, we realized that we were going to have to build all the streets of Weisberg because those just really don't exist. You can find lovely examples of individual buildings, but you can't find a streetscape. Um,
or the building's amazing, but there's a Starbucks on the ground floor.
exactly.
You know.
And so some of that you can work with, but not as much as, I mean, we really wanted something else. We wanted this world to be right. And even in historical areas, they're often all cleaned up and spit shined and ready to go for the tourists to come through, and Starbucks is there.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Even more so in Prague. Because, yeah.
That it becomes impossible. It really does become very difficult. And then add to that, we've had a couple of world wars since the time of our show where it takes place, and yeah, we ended up building it.
You should
But we
probably,
also
yeah.
built almost everything. Like almost everything you see in the film is built.
I
There's
was I was getting to that point because I was watching it last night and I'm like, man, this feels like 80% of it or
I'd
something
say more
really
than that. I mean, certainly the crossroads. No, we didn't build that. Although we did add
Yeah, well, you outline the road and put the snow and
Yeah,
but
but that wasn't something that I needed to do anything on. But anywhere you see a building or a structure, probably I built either I built the whole thing. Actually, I usually built the whole thing. There's 2 courtyards that we shot on location, but there was builds on those as well. Um, and then other than that, I mean,
One of them was the Mongolian village, right? The
no,
one where he,
yes, the Romanian village. I built that.
Romanian village.
Built at that was I guess you could say that was built on a location. That was a field.
oh yeah. Well, someone has to own the
Yeah,
ground
someone
on
has
which you
to own the
build.
land.
But other than that,
Yeah. Other than that, it was all built.
It might be worth talking about like why, because I think we're asked a lot like why didn't you shoot in a real castle? There are amazing castles in Central Europe. I
There
think maybe
are.
we should go into
Sure. Yeah.
specifically we need in the movie versus
Yeah.
a good
So
castle
so
to visit as a tourist.
when I was looking at castles, came in 2 flavors. They were either complete ruins where half the walls were down, um, or they were nice and they'd been renovated and they were beautiful and they were whitewashed and they looked like something was new. And that's just not Orlok. We needed um, I needed the decay. I needed the feeling like this is Orlok's place. It's an extension of Orlok. That's where we needed to go, and we weren't able to do that in a location. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is that Rob and Jarin have very specific needs in terms of what they want to do with the camera, and to accommodate that, oftentimes I'll need to build a set.
Right, and it's also like there's one thing to look medieval and have kind of crooked hallways that do these little unexpected things and have unexpected shapes, but it's another to like literally be in a piece of vernacular architecture where it's like you can't. This is where the camera is, and that's it. It's like dictated for you, so you're not leading what the shots are. So like, well, this is the only place to, and you'll see that in the sorry to say, but like in the Herzog movie, like they're in that little tall narrow courtyard. They're just like with an 18mm lens, just sort of like trying to like record the space.
And
Yeah, I just rewatched it. You're right, Jarin. Yeah.
That are all whitewashed.
Yeah, not the moodiest thing. It's not the moodiest version of Dracula, that one. But
No, it's not. And actually, fun fact: I just shot for Werner, and I was asking him. We were in the car, we're driving, and I'm like, "Hey, you want to go watch Nosferatu with me?" And he's like, "I gotta go to Ireland. If not, I would." So he's probably somewhere in some other castle.
It'd be fine if he's just like no.
Yeah, probably. So that's really wonderful, obviously, because for people that like to shoot on film, we always want to go practical. And it seemed like a lot of the set construction or like the set design, or at least for me, I really geeked out on the geography, Yarin, of how the camera was. It seemed like a lot of stuff was obviously blocked for camera, and that was, infused by the art direction. Yeah. So I'm just guessing, but is there any sets that were moving or that were participating with the shot at the time?
Yeah, there were several. The opening shot, if you could see the set, it was a very misshapen room because it was all about the Jarin's beautiful camera move, and that we went 180 degrees, right?
270.
270
yeah,
degrees.
Yeah. But it's the nature of the lens of that focal length that it's wide enough to block a scene like that, but you're never seeing so much that you're really scrutinizing the shape of the room.
Right.
Like the depth, it's just enough to obscure the z-axis or abstract it enough that it's sort of like, oh, okay, so here's a wall, and then there's a window, and then here's the other wall.
And we knew we had
the relationships are not.
And we knew we had one scene, really one shot.
Yeah.
So we needed to accommodate that shot, and it wasn't like I had to worry about the other 12 scenes we're going to be doing in that room.
Which one was it? Is it her, like the bedroom scene? I'm thinking
the opening of the movie where she levitates and the shadows in the window.
Oh, wonderful! Yeah, I was wondering. I was like, this is a really precise dolly shot, or Yarin's in the super techno crane and something happened where they moved the wall.
It's a dance floor dolly, Yeah.
And then there was a shot in the Hutter's parlor where we did we lose you? Can you guys hear us still?
Oh, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm just going to throw a couple pictures here and there throughout.
So the In the Hutter's Parlor, there's a scene where Jarin has this gorgeous move where he comes up and over Ellen and Thomas Hutter,
Doing some sexy stuff.
doing some sexy stuff. And so, if you think about it carefully, they're actually up against the wall, but the camera actually flips over and is then behind them. So that wall has to move as it's going. There's a couple of others. There's the crypt.
Yeah, you got to make, you know.
You got to make accommodations for cranes.
I mean, at this point, he'll just put like, oh, this is where the crane base is going to be. Like, as I'm looking at the plans for the first time, because he just knows how it's going to be, you know, what the camera support's going to be, especially with an uneven floor, you know. So it's you're gonna be on a crane hovering over it.
And you guys don't like to do steady cam. They do almost everything on a dolly or crane.
That's it, dolly crane. The end. You know, I think even the tripod. Like, let's use a dolly as a tripod too. So, you know, for aesthetics when they do occur.
That sounds amazing. That's so much fun. I really enjoyed the color palette. One of the things I was wondering, obviously, if it wasn't done on set and there was a lot of set construction, that part of the world obviously has a more overcasted feature or let's call it weather filter, if you will. If you could talk about a little bit about that, Aaron, because obviously on purpose, I never really saw sharp light until maybe
Nope.
shadows were cast, which is, by the way, I love that everything's done practically. You know,
There's CG in there, but it's with great care. So hopefully, you know, it's treated well. It's kind of two topics. You know, one is that I had the most involvement in the CG as I've ever had so far. So I'm basically lighting those with obviously direction to, you know, a small army of digital artists to sort of, you know, direct them like I might, you know, a gaffer. You know,
You
and
did
then,
a lot practical though too.
yeah, a lot of practical, or you know, it's a lot of fusion, and hopefully you just, you know, it's unclear when ends and when begins. Hopefully, yeah. And the other topic is just that, you know, I think for the movies we do generally, but especially here, you know, what really works the best for Rob for day scenes is overcast, gloom. He will wait, you know, for if it's clear weather, we gotta wait for it to clear, or choose a time of day when the sun's low enough, and then it kind of goes behind, you know, a city wall, you know, or some buildings that Craig built, whatever. So you have shade.
sure.
Yeah, and then you got to black out with across the street because the light's going to bounce off of that. And you got to chase it a bit, but you know, anyway, day should be overcast, but night you need hard light, just because I just don't think that moonlight doesn't look good soft. So it's kind of illogical, makes no sense. How every night, you know, it's cloudy all day and then it always clears up at night, and then it clouds up for the day and then it clears up for the night. So, but that's just, you know, night scenes. You just need that graphic edge to see what's going on when things are dim, you know. And it just, I don't know, it just has a feeling too, you know, especially a high moon, which is kind of the most difficult to pull off, you know.
No, absolutely. And I think it's really appealing, Aaron. It's so close to the human eye because when it's really full moon, it does become sharp. If you go outside and your pupils open, in this case, our stop opens, you do see, like, you can cast a shadow on the floor with your hands. Um, that was one of the, I obviously we're living in a world where everyone is now coming back to film, and in my opinion, I think, you know, cinema is a reflection of the state that society's in, and I really think that more than ever, film has made a huge comeback. And I just give off my hat to you, man. The picture is so gorgeous. The work that you both did, it's so amazing. And I
Yeah.
think one of the things that I really geeked about, that I thought it looked stunning, is that shooting low light on film, with these sets and this production design and how to make these textures come out is so difficult, and you really need to nail it. And I have to say, the forest scene and the silhouettes of
Well,
Nosferatu, I mean, all that stuff, it's incredible. And I wanted to know if you were under, did you push, was the film push?
no,
uh,
the film got a tiny bit of pushing, a mild degree of pushing, but for the entire picture. So the night scenes are no different. I mean, you can make a case that your night scenes should be noisier than your day, because that's kind of what the eye does. But when you push it too much, the tonality gets kind of brittle, and this needed to be voluptuous and lush throughout the movie. So I didn't want to get too edgy or too, you know, it needed to have some smoothness to it, you know, and its voluptuousness. But yeah, but the moonlight stuff is not really low light because I got an 18K HMI up there. You just expose it, to record a certain way. But yeah, you can see quite well in the woods when we're doing those.
Nice. And was that real snow or fake snow or potato chips or how
Potatoes.
old school?
It was a mix. None of it was real snow. None
Oh,
of
right on. So you guys actually use potato chips,
for the falling
Well,
snow.
potato flakes, but sure. Yeah.
potato flakes, right? Right.
For
Instant mashed
falling,
potatoes.
yeah, for the falling snow, we did use potatoes.
Amazing. As far
Um,
as the key lights that were coming in the film that were motivated by candles, when we cut out of it, were you still always using and embracing a key light as a like actual candle light,
What do you mean?
or
Yeah.
did you
There's
supply it with an LED after?
there's no fucking LEDs. Um,
Okay.
but no, it's all real candle. I try to just do the thing. You know what I mean? I mean the Northman. I was making artificial firelight because I wanted to use slow speed stock, just because I wanted that very clean, epic thing. Yeah, this time we allowed for a little grain, which in a modern film stock is never going to be that grainy anyway. So it was very rewarding to find a way to pull off real flame. That is relatively that's real, low light photography, but it's still, I'm still like a rich negative, so I'm still rating it at 320 or 250, but I'm at a T1 sometimes, usually a 1.4, but that stuff, I don't know if I can get too technical here, but that's,
Right, right, yeah.
yeah, that's all real flame. I mean, probably the most heating I'll do is if I need more, I'll bring a flame bar. There's different kind of fire, but if you see fire, that's all it is. It's
Sure.
just it's just a fun thing to do. It's like, oh, can I do this only with flame? Okay, let's see.
Of course, of course.
and
When it came to the color palette, did you guys ever get involved with the costume designer? Or is that something that you just do from prep really, really, really early to make sure that we're all in the
I
same?
talk to Linda all the time, and I go back and forth. When something that I feel is important, I'll push for that. But oftentimes, I mean, she's putting color on an actor, and what looks good on them, I'll often react to that as well. So there's a bit of back and forth.
I mean, is the
Like Lily
yeah.
had this, like she had this beautiful blue dress, and between that and Willem Dafoe's blue eyes, you'll
Yeah, sure.
notice the
Yeah.
bedroom was sympathetic to it. It was blue as well.
Yeah, blue and white. I mean,
Yeah.
did you find that the Harding house was kind of um, did that need the most care just because like you had these costumes, but that's the house that had the most
It was.
vibrancy.
Yes,
So
it was.
really
It
matching
was.
that.
It was a bit wild, as a matter
Right.
of fact.
It's not just
But-
walking into a castle with neutral walls. It was like
Yeah, and so that was certainly that was the one that took the most care, and sometimes was very difficult. I had issues with some of the printing of the wallpaper, just in terms of the color. Um, but
yeah. We had a week on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That one.
yeah, and even then the shift was off, but it was fun. Altogether, that was the trickiest. The Harding's house was the trickiest, just in terms of historically in the Biedermeier period, their tastes were very bold and to a modern eye very jarring. So you wanted to find that edge where it felt like that, but maybe not
Right.
completely. You wanted the impression to be there without necessarily going all the way.
Especially
Although we pushed it, and we did go for us.
Yeah.
We went very.
I had yeah. I was being in a Rob Eggers movie, looking at some like those colors. Took me a minute.
Yeah.
So
That's amazing. I love these details. They're so incredible. The epic scene where we finally he's in the forest and he gets into the carriage and we're now on our way to the castle. How like what's real there? That shot of him, we finally see the castle with the moon, and he comes in, the carriage comes in from the foreground to the background. I was trying to like understand it. I think I saw two elements, like, and the dogs or the wolves, they seemed real, but obviously CGI now it's come really far, so I didn't know where to stand.
No, no.
That shot, that
The,
shot, yeah,
yeah, the wolves are real. The carriage is obviously real. We built that. The road, as you
oh,
can,
the wolves are real.
Yeah.
yeah, the wolves are real.
That's
The
awesome.
I
the
mean, shoot them
horse, the carriage,
separately, right? You do the carriage pass and then you do a wolf pass. You know.
right, and going up. But as you look up that hill, obviously, a lot of the stuff to the right is fake. We actually shot this in a quarry, which was a beautiful quarry. So everything on the left-hand side of the frame is real, and then when
Wow.
you get to the edge, um,
I think
uh,
it's less real than we remember because I found a snapshot on my iPhone
yeah,
lately, and it's just like we took the road, and there's like a bunch of green bushes all over everything else.
yeah.
I think even this is I think they
you,
even
you
created
can't
this.
see what we're pointing at.
I know.
Look at this. But on the very left-hand side, that's real, and the road is real. I don't know where the edge of the rock is, but
Right.
this is one of the bigger visual effects shots in the film.
Right. But you spend time doing it and matching the light, and I think an early version the moon was too big, and I was trying to get the perspective on the castle right at a certain distance, and yeah, I think usually you'd have a much bigger moon, but I was trying to be a stickler as far as like, well, here's the focal length, and this is how big the moon would be, on that focal length. So
Sure. And also with the size of the quarry, right?
yeah, I mean, the hills in the distance aren't there. It's just like a rock face there, and with and then on top, just out of frame, I have a lift and the moon, But yeah,
Yeah.
That's amazing. What was the stop? Once we enter the castle, we finally meet the Count, and obviously he's such a phenomenal actor, but the character is a very tall individual, and it's really brilliantly shot, and the way the set looks, and it's been run down, and the candles and the waxes, and obviously the fire. Is it tricky to start framing for him and the main actor? Does it get weird? Because I've noticed that part of the beginning we start introducing this character with really tight shots, and were you on purposely throwing more light for those particular shots so you can have a deeper stop, or do you always leave the stop where it is?
that seems probably a T2, probably.
Oh wow.
So yeah, I mean, just because it was lit by that fireplace, and obviously, you come around and you're not looking at the fireplace anymore. Then I'm it's still flame because that was my rule for myself. But it's like just putting in the it's like flame bars, and then I put mirrors up to amplify that, and I can move it closer, for shots of Thomas that don't circle the table. But yeah, it's kind of you pick a stop and you sort of stick to it, So
That's amazing. That's so cool. Craig, how real are these rats, man? These
Yeah, about 5,000 were as real as you could get. Um,
right? Where I saw
there was,
some
there was a
real
lot of,
ones.
there was all the foreground stuff were real rats, and then what happened was, depending on where you are, like on the street and stuff, it was probably augmented just a tiny bit with visual effects, like doing a bit of copy and paste, and moving around.
I think Angela does more than we realize.
She does a lot.
She just does a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in the chapel where we see most of the rats, there's a lot of foreground rats. And then I made these rat mats that were like
Right.
half-meter square that just covered the ground. That were I took a bunch of toy rats and I made them look like they were crawling over each other and made a mold of it and flocked it so that we would have a base. But then Angela did all the heavy lifting on that in terms of the deep background, in terms of animating rats on top of it. We just didn't want her to have to start with nothing. So there was a sea of rats that she was
Shapes, yeah.
rat shapes that she was animating on top of. But all the ones in the foreground and a lot of the midground, those are rats.
I mean, but it's shocking how little area 5,000 rats cover. I mean, to really
Yeah.
fill that chapel, what would you say, 30,000?
Oh, I think it's over 100,000.
To actually fill that chapel,
Yeah.
right? So you just put them in the foreground, and then anything, even in the foreground, you put like a V of plexi, I guess,
Yeah.
as a little jail for them, and then you shoot through the plexi as you drop. But beyond I don't know what 2 meters was no more rats, and then the rest she had to do. So
Amazing. When it came to shooting and finishing your day, Yarn, where did the film go? Were you sending it to London, or like
There's a lab.
were you applying a lot after you watch your dailies, or do you and Robert just sit down way after it's cut?
There's I do a lot of testing generally, so especially with moonlight and the right degree of desaturation, not only overall but in the various channels, red, green, or blue. And we play
Did you desaturate your moonlight?
a lot, yeah. So yeah, first is a filter that just eliminates all the red light, sort of just because your eye doesn't. I don't know. It just looks good. I don't know. I just somehow buy it. And I think it's tied to your eye. Not only do you not see color at night, but you don't see like red at all. Actually,
I know what you mean. That's really clever. Which filter is that one?
it's something I had made, but it is related somewhat to the lighthouse filter. That was sort of like I just kind of. It actually started with the Northman. I just like was shooting a test, and it was like just timing it blue just wasn't, and then wasn't working, and then I desaturated it, and it was like not quite, and then something about eliminating the red that kind of got there for me. Yeah, so it's related to that. I sort of tweak the movie to movie. I kind of tweak the what wavelengths. So yeah, so it's the beginning of that.
And were you guys able to watch dailies just every
Oh yeah.
12 hours, or?
Yeah, I actually tend to look. Well, I guess I didn't answer the first question. Was is there a LUT? Well, the LUT is sort of determined in prep. So like, there's just a grade. Like day, here's day exterior. Here's sunrise at the end. Here's that grade. Here's moonlight. Here's flame. And then your dailies have that, but there are like 3 or 4 tests for each of those looks. Uh, Even if it's just a high-speed lens test, you're going to use that opportunity to come up with your flame color. So, yeah. What's the second
One
question?
of the one of the questions I had was this is the fourth movie you guys have done together now?
Fourth feature,
And
anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and I was curious, how has your collaboration and your process evolved through the different films?
How's it? It's organically, I would say, in a single word. You just get to know people more and more and what their needs are. And I also think that you feel challenged because Jaren's doing such an incredible job. You want to keep up. Hopefully we're pushing each other all along as we grow as artists as well, together. So
Yeah, and for me too, yeah, it's like I like the little surprises in sets. And it's like I like to come on early and think of shots, but
yeah,
but it's nice when something comes in that's like, oh, I didn't think of that. This is like a new kind of. It's I gotta stretch myself to this kind of room or this kind of architecture or this layout, um, whether it's an attic or whatever, and think outside of where I'm comfortable too. So
right. Well, we've had some challenges. I mean, The Northman was a
yeah,
film with lots of interiors and no windows.
the frickin' windows. Yeah,
Not
here's a smoke hole. It's like, well, how do you light through that? So
so yeah, and the lighthouse was tight. I
yeah,
think that
that's
would be
what
the word for
spatially.
that. And then this one was just a lot. I think
Yeah,
it was just there was just a lot of different looks and a lot of different things that we were doing, and yet trying to make sure we had a consistent and coherent world that
yeah.
we were building.
How many sets did you build in total?
About 60. I think just a little bit better than that. Large, small. Um, we built almost everything. I can't remember. I believe we talked about this earlier. If not, I'm sorry. I've been doing a couple of interviews,
You're good.
um, but yeah, we built almost everything. There's a couple of courtyards that were on location. Of course, things like the crossroads. Some of the outdoor things were where it's just nature. Those were outside. It's not a lot of that. That's just the journey from Weisberg to Transylvania. But even there, we had a couple of sets with the bridge and the
Yeah, even stuff like the estuary, Craig's, still like finessing, adding sand dunes when it's just
yeah.
a lake basically.
Yeah, that was a flat beach. We brought in Luckily there was a sand quarry nearby,
Yeah.
and I brought in 7 giant trucks full of sand and built those dunes and had greens put in the greens, and just because, well, we weren't able to find the look that we wanted in the Czech Republic, and we had a hard time even in the
Well, it's
Baltic,
landlocked,
you know. And so I found a beach in the North Sea that would have been nice, but that's a long ways to go for one scene. So fiscally, we had to be responsible. So we made it. There it is.
There it is. One of the questions that is in the chat is a lot of people have been marveling at how historically accurate the set details were. How much time was put into the research in that aspect?
Well, it's funny on this one. I do a lot of research for all of these films, especially Rob's films. This is sort of a hallmark of the way he likes to work. That everything is historically accurate. It's sort of the base, right? It's where you start from. But this one, I got the first script in 2015. Is that right?
Yeah, it would have been something
like that. So, I've done a couple of projects between. I've done a couple of projects with Rob between. But whenever I wasn't working on it, this was definitely something that was in my mind, and I was looking and studying and buying way too many books and researching it this whole time. So this one has a huge gestation period, and I was searching through the whole thing. I mean, the idea of historically accurate, I'm glad people noticed, and thank you. But the idea is that sort of we're taking that as our base, right? As if the world really, nothing has happened after 1838. And then you start to design from there. So you need to do a lot of research and really understand the material world before you start to design, before you start to actually think about what the beats in the film are and what the characters, what their specific needs are.
But you also have access to earlier periods if you want to.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's just the cutoff.
Yeah.
So we definitely go earlier. And in this one, we go
Von
earlier.
Franz neighborhood or whatever,
Well, there's a lot of neighborhoods that would be earlier, but then also you have Orlok and Orlok's castle. All of that would be. That was even the decoration and the all the furnishings that were in the room. Those were all more 1600s than 1800s. So but the idea is the world stops at 1838. So that's what the historical accurate is. In 1838, you had access to things that were older, but not newer. There's no cars, no cell phones.
So you're a total history geek now for that period.
I am. Well, I'm kind of a history geek anyway, so it sort of fits me well. I enjoy it. I really enjoy it. I like his approach. I mean, I'm speaking for Rob now, but the idea is that if we can ground this in a real world from this period, this specific place, then all the supernatural and odd things that happen in the world are happening to real people, and therefore, hopefully, will make us connect in a
and it makes it more magical.
And it makes it more magical. You can
If
imagine.
you believe it, then it's...
Yeah, you can imagine this stuff happening to you as opposed to just it being complete fantasy.
And that was the conceit, from The Witch too. I mean, I remember Rob trying to, give these sort of like promotional interviews to prospective producers. It's like, well, if you really believe in that farm, when shit goes down, it's like it's all that more impactful, because you're gonna believe that too.
And that's been the truth. That's been the same for all. That's his approach, which suits me just fine.
Here's another question from the chat, and Rafael, I think you'll enjoy this one because the question is, what chemical process was used in developing the film stock, and if or how it helped in achieving the black and white look in the nighttime scenes?
It's just good old regular ECN2 at the lab. I give it a half stop push, but that was just for speed because I knew I would need it. And we did want to see a little bit of grain, but again, it's a contemporary film stock. It's only going to get so noisy, which is fine because it's trying to be a voluptuous movie, as I said. But beyond a half, I did try to get a little bit more speed for the candlelight stuff, but at a stop push, it just got too it got too brittle and too hard looking for this movie. Yeah, and the Moonlight stuff is really just filtration, and then again just the recipe and the grade. Then you're tweaking your red, green, and blue, saturation independently. Um, yeah, and then
Aaron, on that note, buddy, does that filter that you made, does that take light away from you? Like, do you have to compensate on
yeah, it's
exposure?
that filter's probably 3/4 of a stop. I don't know if
Okay,
I mean the light meter does a third, so I don't know. I like a little extra information, so I probably just made it a stop, and then knowing I'd have a little extra. Plus, the Kodak says the film is 500. I say it's 250 anyway, just so I use that. I use the straight line portion, to get out of the toe, because I do like a black.
sure, sure, sure.
Well, maybe when you guys have to hop off, because I know you're back to back, but if there's any questions on like film process, Rafa is also a huge film buff and nerd when it comes to shooting on film. So maybe we can chat a little bit after Jarin and Craig have to hop off about just like the chemical process, etc. But here's another question. There has been a lot of Nosferatu movies and iterations over the years. What were you guys trying to achieve that you think that the others didn't focus on, or what were you guys trying to do differently from the others?
Um, I can tell you from my side. As far as the story, I'll leave that to Rob. I mean, I think that he did a fantastic job of giving Ellen more agency. But aside from that, I honestly, uh, I wasn't trying to necessarily be the same or different from either one of those films. I just approached it as our film, and this was our story. So, I mean, obviously, we all had the same source material, so there were going to be some similarities, but I don't think the sets are very similar to either of those films, with maybe the one exception being the beach, because to be honest with you, I loved the beach from the original, and it was also in the Herzog film. I love, and I know Rob loved those crosses that are.
Mm.
I've had a lot of people ask about, are the people buried in the sand? No, those are crosses to sailors who have lost their lives at sea, and that was not uncommon to do. Um, so it's not really a graveyard. Those are memorial markers to people who have died at sea. Um, and so, that one was probably the one that I actually was thinking a little bit about the other films, or certainly the first film. Um, but that's it. Everything else was just um, taking Rob's script as this where I was starting from.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think as far as the photography, the sort of general reference was, romantic, which isn't really conveyed in the other two Nosferatu. I mean, there's a whole like romantic gothic canon, but as far as the other two Nosferatu films, I didn't get that from them. I mean, I think it's the original is, they call it expressionistic film, but I don't know. I mean, the other thing is that like both the earlier two versions are kind of scrappy indie movies, So this is probably this of the Nosferatu titles. This one's the first, I guess, film with a certain production value. So that's fun. So maybe that separates itself.
Yeah, you
So
guys raised the bar heavily.
what's that?
You guys raised the bar
Yeah,
very
well,
heavily.
yeah, it's also like the others have they I'm trying to be very careful, but they are you know they are indie films, and this is not that, as far as the feel and really going into chiaroscuro much more than the other films.
Well, and the first one was from 1922.
1922, yeah,
Yeah,
your film stock is has a speed of 8, or something, so it's like
yeah.
you're
I
whacking,
mean,
you're really whacking it. We didn't have to do that.
the original is a fantastic film from 1922.
Sure. I mean, there's some pretty. If you look at a few films later, it's look at Sunrise. Like that's a beautiful looking movie. But it's a little later in his career, and so um, anyway, it's just good to do a nice dark chiaroscuro version of Nosferatu.
What you mentioned a little bit earlier about a couple, let's call them rules that you have, like you said, no LEDs, or
Oh no,
using
there are
fire.
LEDs in the movie. I was just being flippant. I just, I'm just a purist with things. But yeah, I do use LEDs 'cause out the window. I kind of this very elaborate system to make daylight, artificial daylight, to build, basically effectively what would be out the window in a general sense, meaning that I put a duvetine horizon. The sky near the horizon is brighter than it is as higher up. The color is a little different. So there's a sunrise. Not only am I putting a very hard source on top of, that's warmer, that's warm, on top of a blue sky. I'm also putting a row of LEDs to make the horizon just above that duvetine, you know, um, like it would be at sunrise. And that's a little warmer too. So I'm trying to create this gradient out the window that would be present during a real, during real dawn. Anyway, I totally took over your question. Sorry.
No, no, no. You're good. I was just curious about, yeah, if you had any other rules like that. Like, we're trying to use as much available candlelight as possible, or firelight, using maybe not as many LED fixtures. Like what, and for both of you, I guess what, if there's some certain rules that you guys went by on this film.
Um, the only rule, the first rule that comes to mind is just kind of, trying to block things in as few pieces as possible, um, just try to see if something, just really take the months that we have for storyboarding, and really just sort of pluck stuff out, or, make sure the beats are in the right order to read visually in the most effective way.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that we're historically accurate. I think that's the base. It's sort of our base level, just trying to be as authentic. It's impossible to be completely authentic, but to be as authentic as possible is where you start. And then you start to design from there. But the design rules after that were few and far between. I know that Rob doesn't like a lot of red in this film, which um,
Well, just so I guess when you do see it,
yeah. So when you do see it,
Yeah.
it's there. It has more impact. Um, but that's really kind of it. I can't think of any other real rules other than just trying to tell the story in the best we can. Thinking about that.
There are, yeah, I'm thinking about it too. There are some like strong preferences. I know they're maybe on the edge of rules. Like, I don't like converging lines in an interior unless it's like a decidedly high angle shot. Like,
Yeah.
I put a little bubble level on the camera for every shot, just to make sure that everything's are rectilinear. So it just has it's just kind of a square, kind of storybook that feels like an illustration. In
And
some way.
also, yeah, and then I guess also just getting to know your preferences. You know, I know that a lot of things are gonna be like
Yes,
center shot,
shot and
symmetrical,
shoot into the room.
shoot into the room. So you start
Not
to
a little bit like this. No, you're
Yeah.
right down the room.
so you start composing for that, and then if there's the one temple that I'm wanting not to be square on, I'll beg until we finally look at it from
Sure.
a little bit of an angle. But in general, I know their preferences. And so, are those rules? No, but I know that they're probably going to shoot this set like this. So, you know, I'll start doing what I can do for the composition, and then I'll hand it to them, and they'll figure out where they want the frame to be.
Yeah, we're just looking at this slideshow of symmetry here, which is really more Rob than myself. But right now, I just have like a Rob filter. Like, okay, he's gonna want it.
Yeah.
He's gonna want this classical composition. So, I'm yeah. The modernist compositions, be for another movie.
Lily's performance, the whole cast is incredible, but Lily's performance, she had this incredible physicality to her, being possessed and all this stuff. Was all of that also blocked to camera? Because there's some moments where I was like really immersed with her and your camera and the way the textures really infuse what's happening to her. I thought it was so brilliantly done. Was there ever any moment where we just have to roll and wait for that moment, or was that also choreographed with camera in the
That's rehearsal. I mean, the difference for that stuff, like I'm looking at a picture of her going to the window. We know that she's going to stand and she's going to levitate in that spot. We got to, accommodate in her frame, enough space under her toes to see that she's levitating and make a nice frame and all that. But as far as the possession stuff, you can't really, that stuff, you have to see her do it to know where the camera's going to go and when it should move from point A to point B. Is there a point C? Because I'm seeing this other thing going on, maybe point B isn't really fully exploiting what that, what it could be, if we were in this position. And also the timing of things, like should we move kind of throughout, or should it be motivated by some spasm or something that she does? So that stuff was boarded later after, working through rehearsal with her and Rob and Marie Gabrielle, the movement coordinator. So
Nice.
that's a dialogue too. And then, also like, I'll talk about, what do we change the order of when these things happen in your movement? Or maybe it becomes about the face instead of the whole body, or, what should the frame size be? You work it through.
Nice. Do you and Rob usually go with putting the camera on the shadow side, or is that something that you'd like to do, or is that like a
That's a case by case.
okay? Yeah.
I mean, the first thing is like, my base too is like, what does light actually do in a room? And then, the first tools to reach for are, blocking to what a window is, instead of something else. Putting an unmotivated source will never really happen. So, and then an extreme example is I'll ask Craig, like, can we actually literally move a window over here? Which doesn't happen that much, but
That was my next question. That's such a dream, guys. That's so great. I love hearing this because, sky's the limit, and that's cool to hear. Because I always feel like we all want to be in that position where, oh, well, that window should be 5 feet over, and you guys were going and did that basically.
Yeah, I mean, we do. I mean, I'm certainly as I start to design things, I'm always thinking about the light as well, and I have no idea what Jaren's going to do exactly, but you want to put windows where you think they're going to be helpful. When he starts blocking out the scene, if things need to change, then I'll just redesign the room to accommodate the shot.
no problem.
Yeah.
Right. No problem.
It's like even this interview. It's like, well, okay, there's a window here. We're just like in some hotel, we're trying to, and there's like a picture right there that I really don't like,
Yeah.
but there's like this compromise between
Get that picture out of here.
I won't show it to you. But it's, so this is sort of a compromise. Like I would really have liked, more 3/4 as opposed to the cross lighting, but then I'm sacrificing that. So we'll work together to get the good stuff that's in the shot, but also get the light, get the right relationship to the motivated light, whether it's a window or a lamp, or the oil lamps you can sort of play around with and put anywhere, like in the lighthouse. So that's a little easier.
But it's a collaborative art, so you want to work together to get the best images possible.
Yeah, and then there's like stuff in Von Franz's attic or whatever, and there's like certain pieces you want to see, like, oh, we want this steaming,
right?
Whatever that is,
all the alchemist stuff.
Yeah, where's the best place for that, and where do I put a light source? So there's things I can do for him. I probably could have done better for you in that location. Sorry, but it's like, what can I do for him? What can you do for me?
And that set was so full of stuff. I mean, honestly, you'd have to write 6 more scenes just to be able to exploit it.
Yeah, I mean they're massive. So basically, just it's all relative, right? So it's the whole creative process, and whatever comes from Rob, if the blocking is changed, you guys can just modify.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, like Rob wanted, a scene to start with a bunch of birds or something, or at that table. One of the Von Franz's attic or something. Like Aaron's at the, we blocked Aaron's at a table with some stuff that they wanted to see to tell the story of Von Franz, and
Right.
So that'll happen too.
Yeah, and it all comes, honestly, this all comes from Rob as well. I mean, we're all reacting to Rob's initial ideas and trying to find his vision. Hopefully give him some things that he's happy surprises that he to push things.
But to be clear, all the surprises happen in pre-production.
Yeah, they all happen. Nothing. You don't walk on set and be like, oh,
Huh.
and here's the set. I thought you'd like pink.
That's important to note. Yeah, all the surprises in pre-production. Here's another question. As far as your testing method goes, how do you go about setting up a test scenario such as your moonlight forest scene? I imagine it requires a bunch of resources to make it happen, but also to dial in the specific look you're going for.
I mean, that obviously, they're not going to pay for a test where we go out in the woods and set up lights for 5 hours. But yeah, that's more about lighting ratios. So I'm trying to think about how to hit the lighting ratios, because that's all that moonlight stuff is, and it's fairly precise, especially if you get interior. That stuff was pretty arduous. Interior moonlight. Yeah, so that's just what level do I set the moon? What level do I set? There's basically two kinds of fill light. One's a little more active than the other. Like there's a top light, which is skylight, right? So there's that fill light, and what level do I have to test to figure that out? But I was doing a smaller scale. I'll just shoot maybe a head to toe shot or something in a studio, and it looks bad because you're just in a plain room. But it's like, okay, I'm gonna set the moonlight at -1.5 and -2 and -2.5, and go down the line, and then the ratio of the fill light, and go down the line, and then the more frontal fill light, and go down, and all the different combinations of each. And then then there's a separate test once I have those ratios of what gels to use or filter, and what sometimes you need to use a gel on the light, sometimes you got to use a filter on the camera, and but they need to be matching each other, and they're one's from a filter manufacturer, the one's from Roscoe. Like, how do you find one that kind of makes the version of each that they match? So if I need to use a filter rather than a gel, then I know that it's technically a match, or records the same on the film. So yeah, and then at the beginning of any movie, I'll just write a test regimen. Like, test 1, film stocks, and that'll be would be all the pushing, or maybe it's bleach bypass. Does that work? Fog, flashing, blah, 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 and it's like this very tedious checkerboard of all the various combinations, and then there's like a lens test, and okay, what's helpful to see? Bokeh, or, micro contrast on a face, or halation from a window, so then these are all separate tests. It's like a lens day. Okay, so yeah, then you got to find a location for that and curate that. But yeah, usually there's like 8, I'd say maybe more, but this movie had 8 to 10 different tests.
Yeah, and then you let us throw in some fabrics and some textures.
Yeah, then there's that. Yeah, then there's that stuff. But that's after you've sort of set, okay, this is the filter / exposure / grade. Once the look is set, then you. But sometimes you gotta make decisions before you have all that set. So yeah, it can get tight too.
Yeah, I'm glad you got into the ratios, because that was another question that was asking about that piece. But I think, to your point, I think what's important there to note is that a lot of that can be done with not a lot of resources, but you have the sort of intentionality behind, okay, what am I testing? I'm testing filters, I'm testing ratios, I'm testing these different things, and that can be applied to a much smaller scale.
Yeah, for sure. Like someone standing by a window, what ratios do you like? And it's different for everybody. I'm trying to find something that's rich, but I also believe, but also serves, can still convey information we need to convey, tell a story. So, you just got to do all 3 things, and you're always kind of on the edge of each, especially in an interior moonlight scene. So, or think your margin.
I know you guys have to wrap up.
Yeah.
So we're gonna honor your time and let you get to your next chat. But thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate your time. I know you guys are slammed getting into award season and all of that stuff. So good luck with everything. Maybe we'll get you back at some point, and maybe we'll record a testing, chat or something like that. I think that would be really valuable for people. But yeah, thank you guys so much. I don't know if you have any last kind of anything that you want to share. If not, then we'll let you go, and then Rafa,
Yeah.
Thanks so
Way to
much for
relax.
having us on.
Thank you.
thank you so much. And then Rafael, maybe you can stay for a second and talk a little bit more about film process. But then, yeah, thank you,
I gotta
Jarin,
follow
for
these guys. I don't know how to follow these guys.
That's what I want to.
yeah,
We're starting developing a Nosferatu too. That's how I'm gonna follow these guys.
we appreciate
Craig,
you.
such
Thank
a
you.
pleasure, man. Such a pleasure, Craig. Seriously, what a gorgeous world. I go to sleep dreaming once in a while. How do I become Yarin? And congratulations, and buddy, sending you a big hug from LA. I'm so pumped for you, Yarin. It looks gorgeous.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, beautiful picture.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.